kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" See, that's so good, because right then and there, Goliath lost the battle. Because I don't know if you've seen the kind of slingshot that David had, but it's kind of like, it's like a string with like a little pouch there, right? So I guess in the sun or whatever, but Goliath saw that, and Goliath assumed it was a stick. He didn't realize that it was actually a slingshot, right? God blinded him to the truth of what the battle was actually being fought, how it was being fought. Because if he knew that, he wouldn't have picked up a sword. As we read, he picks up the sword instead of picking up a javelin or the spear, which would be more efficient for a medium range or a long range attack. But as we read, he says, let me see. He says, "And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with the sword and the spear and the javelin, but I come against you with the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcass of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by the sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all you into our hands." As the Philistine moved closer to attack, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out the stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine out on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down to the ground. So David was triumphant over the Philistine with the sling and the stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed her. So the battle was never David's to fight, right? The battle was God's to fight. And when he realized that, he didn't know how he was going to win this battle, but he knew that God would make a way, right? And as soon as Goliath thought that he had a stick in his hand instead of a sword, instead of a slingshot, he knew the battle was won. That's when he started talking mess, right? He said, "All you guys are going to die," right? So that is so powerful, because that fear that Isaac had, that fear that Abraham had of these nations, David fought against that. You know, you read, if you go into, I believe in Romans chapter 8, it says, and it says that Abraham, in fear, basically in hope against hope, that he gained his promise. We have to fight against the hope of fear to get the hope of faith that God has for us. And that's what David did here. David fought against the natural fear that his people had of this group of people, and he fought against it, and he gained his promise, which was Jesus going to come and do his lineage. So that's the first part. The second part of the message is I want to kind of talk about Saul. You know, Saul is the first king of Israel, and he has a lot of issues, right? The main reason is that he lost the promise that that Jesus was to come through his lineage. But if you look at, you don't have to actually turn here. You can actually stay in 1 Samuel. But in Genesis chapter 49, verse 27, it reads that Benjamin, and basically, just to give you a footnote, basically Israel, who is Isaac's son, is about to die. He has 12 sons, and he's basically given a prophetic word to each son, right? To his son Benjamin, who is his youngest, he says this. He said, "Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning, he devours the prey. In the evening, he divides the plunder." So we turn to 1 Samuel chapter 9, read verses 1 through 2. Well, actually, you have to turn there. But what it is saying is that I'm basically just clarifying the point that Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin. It says basically, if there was a Benjamite, a man standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abel, the son of Zerah, the son of Baruchoth, the son of Ephiah of Benjamin. Kish had a son named Saul, a handsome young man, as could be found anywhere in Israel, and he was a head taller than anyone else. So that's basically proving that Saul was, in fact, a Benjamite. But what I want you to turn to is 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 1 through 3. There we read that the Lord basically told Saul to do a specific thing. And Saul made a choice not to obey God. Instead, he made a choice to hold on to his natural instincts, which was being a wolf. In verse chapter 1, it says that I am the one, the Lord, who sent to anoint you king over his people of Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel, when they waylaid them as they came from Egypt. Now go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put them to death, the men, the women, the children, the infants, the cattle, and the sheep, the camels, and the donkeys. So God basically said destroy the entire nation of the Amalekites. In verse 7 it reads, Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and his army spared Agag, and the best of his sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lamb, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak they totally destroyed. So Saul lost his promise because he could not fight against his natural urges, which was to plunder, which was to take the best of something. And as you read, Samuel, who anointed Saul king, is very upset. This is basically the end of their relationship and the end of any chance of Saul having Jesus come through his lineage. As you continue to read the story between Saul and David, you see that that promise is now on David's life. And something in Saul, spirit in Saul, feels the need to hunt him down, to destroy him. He begins to try to kill David. And I bring that up because a very famous member of the Benjamite family is Paul. Paul, who was named Saul, he was named after the most famous member of his lineage. And that's so important to know that that wolf was in Paul, because Paul did the exact same thing that Saul did. You know, when Jesus died and then the Christian and the Christian nation began to grow, it was something in Paul that had to destroy that, right? That was that spirit. So when you turn to, and I'm going to wrap it up here, when you turn to Acts chapter 22, verse 3, this is Paul speaking about who he is. And basically what Paul is saying here is that Paul said, I am a Jew born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women, throwing them into prison. As the high priest and all the council can themselves testify, I even obtained letters from them to their associates in Damascus, and went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. About noon I came near Damascus. Suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? I asked. I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. He replied, my companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. What shall I do, Lord? I asked. Get up, the Lord said, and go to Damascus. There you will be told that you have been assigned to do. My companions led me led me by hand into Damascus, because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. So basically, what I want to tie together here is that there are things in our past. There are things that we get from our lineage, but that is not who you are, right? In 2 Corinthians 5, verse 5, chapter 5, verse 17, we read that, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, there are a new creation has come. The old has gone and the new is here. You are a new creation, right? We don't have just a natural heritage. We have a spiritual heritage. And that spiritual heritage always takes priority over what's come naturally. Okay? So I hope that was a blessing for y'all. Thank you. Appreciate it.